Hi folks, this is chapter 24-7, the large intestine. All right, so the large intestine starts right here in the cecum. This is where the ileum, the last part of the small intestine, dumps its contents into the large intestine right here in the cecum. This is the ileocecal valve located at the ileocecal junction. Hanging off the cecum is this appendix or vermiform appendix. And as you know, if the vermiform appendix becomes inflamed, you have appendicitis, and they typically take that out because a burst, if the appendix bursts, it could be deadly. We usually say the appendix is vestigial, but some of the latest research says that, well, I don't know if it's true research, but some of the latest literature and studies have said that it's maybe not as vestigial as we once thought, that it could be a seeding source for beneficial bacteria. So there's normal flora or beneficial bacteria in the appendix, and if the count or the concentration of normal flora falls in your colon, then you can reseed it from the appendix. All right, from the cecum, you have this ascending colon going up. Then you have a flexure, and we'll name these flexures in lab. A lot of this stuff is lab. This is the hepatic flexure or right colic flexure. And you have your transverse colon going across. Now, let me show you this. This is the longitudinal muscle fibers of the colon. Remember, you have two layers of muscles. You have circular and longitudinal muscles. And those longitudinal muscles are called tinea coli. And the deal is this: the longitudinal layer in the colon, the longitudinal muscles in the colon, are not do not completely encircle the colon. They are in thinner bands called tinea coli. Because of that, we pull the colon, we pull it, the tinea coli pulls it along the band, but it's not pulled equally all around, and we get these bulges called haustra. So we have the haustra, we have the tinea coli. In other words, otherwise, there's the same four tunics that you're used to. After the transverse colon, we have the splenic flexure or the left colic flexure, and there's a spleen right in here, and that's why they call it the splenic flexure. Whereas back here, there's a liver. Well, look at the liver right here. Here's the liver, and here's the hepatic flexure. There is a spleen right in here, and there's the splenic flexure. And this is the sigmoid flexure because this is the sigmoid colon. So you can see that. And you see the haustra right here, formed because of the tinea coli. You see the descending colon. Then you see your sigmoid flexure right here. And this is the sigmoid colon. They always say that's S-shaped. That's an S to me. That's actually a pretty poor S. So let me draw a better S. That's an S. I don't see that here. Maybe a loose S, maybe. I don't know. People always say the sigmoid colon's S-shaped. I don't see it. Regardless, here's the sigmoid flexure, sigmoid colon. You can see the tinea coli. All right, that's the large intestine. The rectum stores feces until defecation, and then the anus is the opening to the rectum, really. You can see you have anal columns and anal canals. It's just flaps of tissue, really. That's all it is. You have sphincter muscles here. You have your internal anal sphincter, which is under involuntary control, and you have your external anal sphincter here and here under voluntary control. And we're going to talk about the defecation reflex shortly. This is one of your levator ani muscles that you learned in Bio 203. I'm not sure which one it is. You remember there was the iliococcygeus, pubococcygeus, and puborectus, and I am really not sure which levator ani muscle that is. All right, so that's that. This is the collage of that for you. You can see the four tunics just like before. There certainly is same four tunics as you're used to. Look at the tinea coli. It's not a complete longitudinal layer. Your circular layer is complete, just like the rest of your digestive system. But the Taenia coli is a band of longitudinal muscles, and that's why we get the haustra. All right, so what makes us hungry? Well, we have hormones that are orexigenic. That means they make you hungry. And we have hormones that are anorexigenic. And that means it alleviates your hunger. It hits the satiety center and says you're not hungry anymore. You're satiated. So what are my orexigenic hormones? Ghrelin is my orexigenic hormone. It comes from the stomach and goes up to my hypothalamus and says you're hungry. As soon as you eat, you release a peptide YY, peptide tyrosine, insulin, and leptin. These are anorexigenic hormones. These go up to your brain and say that you're satiated or satisfied, and that alleviates your hunger. So ghrelin is the orexigenic hormone that gives you the drive to eat.
The presence of food in the stomach and chyme in the duodenum stimulates mass movements in the colon. Mass movements are integrated by the enteric plexus. They propel the contents of the colon toward the rectum. The presence of feces in the rectum stimulates parasympathetic and local reflexes that result in defecation.
All right, well, we'll go more into the defecation reflex. That's a simple way of saying it, that when the rectum stretches, there's some local reflexes that cause it to contract and lead to defecation. But it's a little bit more complicated than that. Not much more complicated, just a little, because there are some long reflexes, and there actually is. It's necessary to fire the somatic motor neurons as well, and we'll talk about that in a second. We're talking about it right now. Okay, so you have feces in your rectum, and you stretch your rectum. So this is distension of the rectum. Let's do the short reflex first. Short is S for short. Stimulation of stretch receptors. This hits the myenteric plexus, and you know where that is. That's in the muscularis externator, because remember the submucosal plexus is in the submucosa. And this comes back around and increases peristalsis. Remember what peristalsis is. Peristalsis is the coordinated contraction of the longitudinal and circular muscles. So this short reflex right here is going to push the feces towards the anal canal, the anal opening. All right. Now let's do the long reflexes here. When I have the distension of the rectum, I come up here and hit a long reflex. This long reflex stimulates my parasympathetic motor neurons in my sacral spinal cord. Remember, the parasympathetic nervous system is craniosacral, so you would expect this to be the sacral part of my spinal cord. So parasympathetic neurons are now firing. Let's follow L2B. This increases peristalsis throughout the entire large intestine, and that moves the feces towards the rectum. Meanwhile, what's going on here is I have a parasympathetic neuron that inhibits the contraction of the internal anal sphincter. So right here, follow the dotted line, go up here to the key. The key says dotted line is inhibits. So what my parasympathetic nervous system does is relaxes my internal anal sphincter. Relaxes it. But it doesn't mean you're defecating right now, because this happens automatically. And if this were true, we would all have to wear Depends, because we would all have accidents. Something else also has to occur, and that is you have to voluntarily relax the external anal sphincter. The external anal sphincter at this moment is involuntarily contracted. All right, so how do I know that? Right here. When all of this is occurring, a somatic motor neuron fires and goes down to my external anal sphincter and contracts it. And it's an involuntary contraction of my external anal sphincter. So how do I defecate? I have to send a voluntary signal down to relax my external anal sphincter. So The defecation reflex is an automatic relaxation of the internal anal sphincter. It's an automatic contraction of the external anal sphincter. And then to actually defecate, you have to consciously make the decision to relax the external anal sphincter. So when you have a baby or a toddler on your hands, how come they're still in diapers? Because the descending motor pathways, this pathway right here, these descending motor pathways, these cortical spinal pathways, haven't fully developed yet. So they're not involuntarily contracting their external anal sphincter. So when they involuntarily relax their internal anal sphincter, they're defecating. And you have to change their diaper. But part of potty training is, well, first of all, you really can't potty train until this cortical spinal pathway is developed. I mean, no one ever tries to potty train a 3-month-old, right? So after the cortical spinal pathway is developed, when the child is in the, say, toddler years, then you can start potty training them and get them to fire this. Well, this is actually fired involuntarily. What you can get them to do is not voluntarily relax their external anal sphincter, to leave it contracted until they get to the bathroom, the toilet, and then they can voluntarily relax their external anal sphincter. So that's potty training in a nutshell right there. So this is the defecation reflex. When we get to the urinary system, the micturition reflex, that's the urination reflex, will be really similar to this. It's quite similar, in fact. Okay, so that's defecation reflex.